Thank you all for coming today. We've got a really exciting session. Good to see some new people here as well, and also some old faces who've been coming every week. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about love. Got quite a strong statement here. All you need is love. So just to introduce the speakers, we've got Nilamani, who has been practicing Bhakti Yoga for
a long time.
a very long time.
Since 95, I guess.
Since 95, wow. So yeah, we're very lucky to have her. And we've got Madhuri, who will be, oh no, it's gone off. But will be leading the guided meditation today. So this is kind of like the first guided meditation that we'll be doing. And if people are interested, we'll also be wanting to do more in the future. We might have a different day where we'll have meditation sessions if that's something that is of interest to you all. So again, we're very lucky to have her. Thank you both for coming today. And yeah, good luck.
Thank you, Ronak, for that very warm introduction. Really, I'm hoping this stays awake. But yeah, really pleased to be with all of you here at Cambridge Jesus College. And today we're going to be talking about this topic, which is kind of connected to last week. It was on identity, is that right? So it's about like exploring the spiritual aspect of ourselves. And this week, I guess we're going to look a bit more in depth at this aspect of love and happiness, which is kind of so important to all of us. And a lot of what we strive for in life is motivated by these things. It's a key determinant in relationships and interactions and relational behavior as well. So I hope you find it helpful. So yeah, I'm going to get started. So this is something called the Love Index, which was put together by Ford, which is a part of Accenture Interactive. It's a design and innovation consultancy, and it kind of reimagines people's relationship with the digital and physical world around us. And they basically use the power of design to create services to really draw people in. And as you can see up here, this is about brand love at key moments, but it works on the same kind of premise. Hi, come on in. Please take a seat around us. Be nice to have everybody at the same level across the kind of circle. But yeah, what sustains love for people in human relationships is similar to what sustains brand experience and brand satisfaction. So as you can see here, I think everybody can see the diagram quite clearly, but you've got fun, relevance, engaging, social and helpful as being the kind of corner facets of that by which a particular brand is measured. Okay, so I'm just going to ask you one or two questions before I get you to do some work in some groups. But do you think a similar model to branding can be used for relationships? Just a couple of quick thoughts before we get you guys into designing your own index. Or can you see any issues with it? Okay, if it's really difficult, I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Maybe once you've designed your own index, you can, let me know what you think of this model. But yeah, does anyone have any thoughts on that right now still at all? No? Okay, let's go to this bit. I'm going to put you maybe in groups. Should we go for groups of 3 to see if you can design your own index?
Hi everyone, I'm Sarvesh.
This is
I'm Ram. And we prepared this diagram. Can I show? Alright. Where we considered three most important aspects of the love index. There's respect, there's effective communication, and there's giving. Because in love, it should be more of a relationship of giving rather than taking. And respect and communication are also interrelated. And we also have a sub-element of privacy involved. But yeah, these were the 4 elements which we were able to map out.
Sorry.
Flip it around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. Who's one selfie?
Would you mind saying your name?
I'm Poppy.
I'm Felix.
Okay, cool.
So we tried to come up with like 5 kind of key aspects of love that fit into platonic, familial and romantic. So we've gone for like caring, which like would be providing support, kind of like helpful on the one that was up there.
Emotional availability or openness also, and then also companionship, affection, and respect and trust also. Those are our 5. Yeah.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those. I mean, some of these obviously overlap with each other, and probably put them into categories as well, but I think the things that everyone's thinking about are really important things, yeah? Maybe one more group, just in the interest of time, if anyone feels like saying. No pressure. No?
A lot of the things were already covered.
Would you mind saying your names?
My name's
and
Aria.
do you mind
My name's Aria.
Oh,
my name's Kian.
Okay.
And yeah, like I said, a lot of things were already covered, but some things that we had that were extra were forgiveness. The idea that you will face problems and you will make mistakes in a relationship, whatever relationship it is. And it's the idea to overcome that together.
We talked about dependability and about being there for each other when things might get hard.
Brilliant. Anything else?
The rest of them are all covered.
Okay, fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much everybody for participating in that. We'll actually hope you might hold on to your pen right now because there's going to be another interactive bit coming up shortly. But we definitely need your models, so if you wouldn't mind giving them to Sundar, and here we will take at least a picture of all of them together, just so we've got them, because that's some really nice. If it's completely legible, just don't worry, we'll figure it out. Still want a picture.
Sorry, we'll take it.
But yeah, I think the reason I wanted to start off with this is that even though today we're going to be really looking at the spiritual aspect of love and how we can really enrich ourselves by going deeper into that and then bringing that into all of our relationships and other aspects or interrelational aspects of love. I think it's really important to think about what love means to us, and I think a lot of the qualities that have been covered here are really, really key. I really love these points about, resilience and adaptability and malleability and understanding, growth, forgiveness. So again, that's an aspect of malleability that allows a relationship to grow, because there is that kind of ability to work through conflict and then get to the next level. And also this point about it being unrequited or not necessarily needing reciprocation, which is actually very idealistic in one sense, but even knowing that that's a goal is amazing. And I think that's one thing we should understand, like for ourselves as well. It's we're not going to all be there in all of our relationships, but at least if we know that these are qualities that we hold dear or we really, really value, we'll work towards them and keep them in the center of our connections. And hopefully we'll realize when they're not being met as well, which is also something that's really important. And I think a lot of us, go through life without really thinking about what it is that love is, or what it is that we value within that whole realm of love that really makes that word into what it is. But I think having points like this where we can actually take a moment just to crystallize what it really means for us will then hopefully bring that to our conscious level at the time when we need it, when we're thinking, is this really what I want to be in? Is this the kind of interaction that I want to foster? Be it with our friends, be it with our partners, or family members, or whomever. So yeah, I hope that was somewhat helpful. And yeah, we may come back to that theme and some of the things that we've discussed as we go through this. Okay, so I'm going to talk about something from the Vedas now, which are the ancient literatures from the East, originating in India. And actually they're understood to be timeless. but carbon dating at the moment, there's a lot of debate about it, but probably 3000 BC, roughly, is something that's recently come up in terms of their origins, as we understand them in terms of the written word. They talk about the self, or the spiritual self, having a really, really deep desire for this unconditional love, which you spoke about, which is really, really difficult to find in normal human relationships. But they also explain that when we understand that there is an aspect of the divine or supreme or amazing, wonderful energy from which everything comes, and we can see that just as if you're in a dark room, when you see the sun, you can see yourself and you can see everybody else. So in the same way, when our knowledge is illuminated by the understanding of the divine, we can understand ourselves as being more than just matter, which is what Sundar talked about last week, and having a spiritual essence. And we can also connect to others and all living beings as being a spiritual essence, which means that the tendency to exploit or use for our own purpose or manipulate or take advantage of would hopefully be minimized, because we'd understand that on a spiritual level we're all equal, and we should at least offer that opportunity to everybody and deal with each other in that kind of very compassionate, kind way. Does anyone have any thoughts on this before I go to the next slide? I know it's quite a deep understanding, and it may be something that you haven't really heard about before, but this idea of being illuminated by understanding of something beyond our experience or beyond ourselves, that is the source or origin of a love that's very, very pure, is something there in many, many cultures in the world, so, and many belief systems as well. So, any thoughts? No? Okay, Sundar?
I think that sometimes when we try and dissect it, it sounds quite foreign, because we normally don't try and analyze love. But it's really intuitive, because no matter what someone says or what someone does, right, they could be greatest philosopher or whatever, still then when they go and live their real life, they desire love, they look for a loving relationship. And so it is quite intuitive for if individuals are if we go down and reflect about what we actually want and what we do, it seems to be quite a natural expression to desire love. So it seems theoretically weird, but I think it's practically quite relevant.
And also it's very practical, because we can see that just like the branding industry is using these aspects of human relational love when they're marketing a product. It's something that's so essential to us, and that we're so seeking that anybody who's involved in marketing or brand work, or kind of anything where we're trying to reach out to other people in different spheres, understands that there are certain things that we're all seeking, and that's why they can almost predict our kind of brand behaviours or market certain products to us based on what they understand of human psychology in this aspect. So yeah, it definitely, I think that it's very natural, following on from what Sundar said, it's very natural for us to seek it, because it's also a quality of the self, which is something that I'll come to in the next couple of slides. So this is something from a very ancient literature called the Svetasvatara Upanishad, and it talks about, this is an analogy of two birds being there together in the heart of every person, and one of these birds is us, or the self, or the Atma is the Sanskrit term, and then the other, and that bird is actually doing a lot and living and experiencing and eating the fruits in the analogy, which I'll come up on the next slide. But there's another bird called the Param Atma, is a Sanskrit term, which is actually an aspect of the divine which is there in the hearts of everybody, and is observing and witnessing and sanctioning. And these two birds are actually best friends, and then they're in the hearts of all of us. So there's something in the Bhagavad Gita which says, I don't know if somebody would like to just read this out maybe. Does anyone can see it? If please go ahead and read. I mean, I can just say it if you want. Oh, can you read it?
Okay, fine.
Okay.
The
If you can't say the names of the Upanishads, you can go to the next bit. You can say the Upanishads.
okay. The Vedas, like the Upanishad, Mundaka,
Yeah,
Sure.
Mandaka, you got it.
as well as the Sveta Satara
Svantara, yeah, you got that one.
Upanishad, compare the soul and the supersoul to two friendly birds sitting on the same tree. One of the birds, the individual soul, is eating the fruit of the tree, and the other bird,
That's
the
my
divine,
typo.
is simply watching his friend.
Right, so that's basically kind of an analogy for us to understand how this aspect of divinity not just enters into every being, but is actually like a friendly companion and there for us. The next bit basically explains that, as I said, one of the birds, which is us, the self, is busy doing a lot of things, while the other bird is actually just watching, witnessing, and sanctioning. And so the divine, or Krishna, is understood to be the witnessing bird. And in the Bhagavad Gita, there's this wonderful conversation that happens between Arjuna and Krishna. And in that conversation, they start off as friends. And Krishna's trying to explain a lot of philosophy to Arjuna. But at a certain point, the relationship has to change to one where Arjuna actually is willing to learn something from Krishna. And so, in the same way, it's understood that when the self bird decides that actually wants to be connected to the witnessing bird, or learn from the witnessing bird, and take some knowledge from the witnessing bird, then that relationship of being connected starts reforming. It starts becoming alive again. And the self actually finds a lot of love in that connection with the divine in the heart. And at the last line is basically saying that because we've almost forgotten that connection that's always been there with us, we're, according to the Eastern understanding, we're kind of transmigrating or living from life to life in different species and different life forms on different journeys, looking for this connection and actually looking for this love. I know these are very deep concepts. There'll definitely be time for us to discuss these in more depth, but this is something that the East is trying to share with us, to say you have a friend that's always been with you and will always be with you, but the question is, do you want to know that friend, and what benefit can you get from understanding that friend? And this is off of the back of the fact that we're all looking for this unrequited, very deep kind of love. Yeah. So I think this just explains further the same point, that when the self bird kind of wants to connect with the divine bird, or the Paramatma aspect, a lot of anxiety and stress and worry starts to be gone and starts to relieve itself, because they're aligned. There's a feeling of connection. So I won't go into that. I mean, you can see the slides, words, if you want to look at it visually. But it's not that you won't necessarily go through suffering, but your perspective and understanding of it changes, and therefore it makes it easier to deal with what's happening in your life. So yoga, I've already put the definition up, but it means to connect. It comes from the Sanskrit word yukta, the root. And I know whenever we think of yoga, we think of people in yoga studios doing wonderful asanas and postures and breathing techniques. But actually what it really means, in its essence, is connection. And bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of love or devotion, which is one aspect to the love conversation we had at the beginning, is very, very high up on this ladder, which I'm going to show you in a diagram of in a minute, of yoga systems. So there are loads of ways to do yoga, as well as the physical yoga. There are loads of systems of yoga, and love or devotion, or bhakti yoga is a Sanskrit term, is one of them. So I know this diagram might look very complicated, but today I'm just going to touch on it just so that you know where bhakti is in this ladder, and you'll go into it in more depth in future talks. So I'm not going to go into the Sanskrit terms, though they're there. But at the very bottom of this ladder, which is talked about in the Bhagavad Gita also, is performance of activities that are not nice, which is vikarma, without any regard for any principles, so kind of hedonistic, selfish, or inconsiderate activity. Then you have karma, which is a grade up from that, where there's positive work being performed, but here it's still without regard for spiritual principles. A level up from that is karma kanda, which is something explained in the Vedas, where people are performing certain acts to get certain results. So this is fruitive. It's where you do something but you want a return on it, and that's why you're doing it. And it's going to help you in some ways, but your desires at this point are still very much based on the body and on the material aspect of ourselves, or mundane aspirations, so to speak, rather than spiritual aspirations. Then you have, this is where the yoga system really starts, in terms of the different types of yogas, karma yoga, which is when someone wants to do a lot of work, but they're happy to let go of the results of that work and offer them, whether it's in their mind or practically, physically, to the divine, or in search for the absolute truth. So even if you don't necessarily believe in a personal aspect of the divine, and you choose to believe in an impersonal energy or an impersonal aspect, both are present and both are understood to be there, as well as the aspect that's within the heart of all of us. But the idea is this is not now about self, this is for others, or in search of something higher. Thereafter, there's something called Jnana Yoga, if you're still with me, which is a knowledge-based yoga system, where there's a lot of acquisition of knowledge to try and understand the truth. And then number 2 is the yoga system, the yoga that we commonly understand as being yoga, with the asanas and the breathing and the do's and don'ts, which are the first 2 steps of the yoga system of Patanjali Muni. And this is about meditation on this Paramatma, or super soul, self in the heart, that we've been talking about through these postures. And right at the top there, number 1, we have the yoga of love and devotion, pure unconditional love. So one of the things that you'll get to learn about aspects of these different yoga systems here, but one of the things that's explained is that you don't have to sequentially go through all these steps. You can just say, actually, I really like number 2, I want to follow the yoga system and see how it works for me, or I want to follow number 1, or yeah, I think I'm at the level of karma yoga, so I'm just going to stay there for now and see how that works for me. But you can see there's a real breadth of options here. And one question I'd ask you, just based off of what we've discussed, why do you think this yoga of love is right at the top there? Why do you think it's so powerful? It's not as austere as number 2, I'll tell you that. I mean, without going into depth from these literatures of the East, it's actually a lot simpler to do. But any thoughts on that? I know it's a bit of a deep question, but any thoughts on that?
Self-realization.
Self-realization.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Understanding we're not just a material body.
Yeah. So you mean that immediately you're acting on a platform of spirituality rather than the body at number 1?
Yeah.
Because, and how does that connect to love? I guess that's the question I'm kind of asking.
Recognising the other bird in the tree steps out of the material world, and it is pure love.
Yes, wonderful. So I guess this idea of another, but not just any other, like we've talked about relationships, but almost extrapolating how we'd want our ideal relationship to be, in one sense, to understand that I actually have this connection with a divine source. And now I'm going to use that loving feeling, which love is understood to be, the most powerful force in the world. There's great books, shows, narratives, prose, poetry, songs. Love makes the world go round. There's phrases that we say. It's the one thing that can help people in the most difficult circumstances in their life. I mean, just something that comes to mind is Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, I think it's called. Don't know, have any of you heard of it or read it? It's about people in the Holocaust, who in concentration camps at the time of the Holocaust, who were in the most devastating circumstances. And I'm sure everyone's aware of the historical circumstances, but what's amazing is that this freedom to choose love was still there. And so you had people who were in the most difficult circumstance, but they're still choosing to be compassionate and kind to others, or still choosing to show that they were happy despite knowing what was about to happen to them. Some of them drew butterflies outside the gas chambers before they went in. There's loads of little things like that in there. And one of the points he makes is that that freedom to choose is one of the things that defines humanity. And when it's used to choose love, it gives tremendous strength, even in the most adverse circumstances, where you think, well, what options do people have here, really? You know. So I know that's quite a strong example, but it's just to give you an idea of the power of love, despite the external circumstances, despite very difficult, situations that people can be in. And so you can see when it's used as a form of connection to the divine in this yoga system, it's extremely powerful. For example, we can talk about being renounced and being austere, like some of these things that a lot of belief systems hold very high. But where do you see it exemplified the most? Often you'll see it exemplified the most in the love of a mother for a child. Why? And I mean, we all have some experience, hopefully, of mother or a mother-like figure in our lives, because in that love is so much sacrifice and so much austerity because of the love. The love enables that mother to make sacrifices or take leaps of faith or do certain things for her offspring that she might struggle to do in any other circumstance. So, yeah. Any thoughts on that before that's a very deep point, sorry guys. But yes, and
I think that, if we're defining yoga as to connect, then there's no better way than connecting other than love, right?
Yeah.
So I think from that point of view, it's just a very easy way of seeing, if one wants to connect to themselves, if one wants to connect to another person, and if love is the easiest method, then it's going to be the same for the yoga system as well, right? So if I want to connect to you and I just find out a bunch of knowledge about you, I mean, it's better than not knowing you.
Very true.
It's better than not knowing you, but I still wouldn't I wouldn't have the same as if I spoke to one of your children and they told me about how much you love them. So then I developed the love from that, that kind of relation.
Beautiful, really lovely analogy. Yeah, because the point Sundar's making is that even in this world, how do we become close to each other, or how do we naturally connect? And love is one of those binding forces. So that's just in our human experience. So what to speak of when we're trying to go into depth in terms of the spiritual aspects of ourselves, or this kind of deeper level of ourselves as we understand it, even if we have a different name for it, a different terminology. So I hope that helps with that. We're going to discuss a piece from George Harrison. Does everyone know who he is? I hope you do. He's super famous, one of the Beatles, and I know this is decades before your time, probably. Because you guys are, I don't know if you're is it the millennials? I'm not sure. No. Gen Z. That's it. Sorry. Yeah, Gen Z. Okay, so this is decades before your time, but one of the yoga teachers from India, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami is on the left. That's George, and I think that's Patty. Yeah, I've got her surname in the middle. Huh? Patty Boyd? Yeah, I think that's right. Sorry, I should remember that. But George was very, very close to A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. I'll say Srila Prabhupada because that's the way he's often called by people who knew him and people who know him. And at one point, George was very, very close to the Swami, and he had just sponsored a big piece of marble sorry, I had one piece of paper there, I can find it. A big piece of marble for one of the temples. And on that day, Srila Prabhupada said, he was explaining to one of his disciples or one of his students that I actually need George to finance the printing of this book called Krishna, which is all about this blue cowherd boy in India who's understood to be the source of divinity or divine. And I'm just gonna, maybe I'll just try and summarize this, but there was just an interesting bit that happened just before George agreed to pay for the printing. I hope it's okay. I know it's kind of going off on a slight tangent, but it'll bring it all back in a minute when we read some of George's words in the introduction. But this is March 31st, 1972. And this student, Shamsundar, explains that, George was like an old friend to Srila Prabhupada. They were very close, and he was really on this journey of spiritual development. And at that point, he was chanting mantras and very serene and very self-satisfied. And he just sponsored this marble slab for a few £1,000. And he was thinking, his teacher just said to him, I think you should ask him about the printing of this book. And the student's thinking, how am I going to ask him that? Because he's going to feel that, we want something from him, and that's not the kind of relationship we've had with him, and I'm really not sure how to do this, and he's feeling a bit nervous. Srila Prabhupada, the guru, said, don't worry, Krishna will help you when you ask him. And at the time, we're talking about $19,000, which is now probably like about $100,000, maybe more actually now. I can't think in inflation terms, but maybe 4 times that, maybe $400,000. We've got an economist here; they can do the maths on this. But anyway, so the slab of marble was dealt with, and somebody called David Wynne, who was a sculptor laureate of England, had designed the coinage. He actually went with them to select the marble, which was quite a big deal. And then now they're having dinner, and the student says to George, he says, oh my gosh, I was thinking, how am I going to ask him for how can I ask him for this money? And he starts explaining, and he can see that George is kind of becoming very serious. He's thinking, oh, I feel really bad, I don't know how can I ask for this. And suddenly all the lights in the house went off, and there was a bolt of lightning that hit the house at that point. The whole house shook, and they sat in silence for a few minutes. And this is the little bit that I'll read you. The lights came back on, and he says, I looked over at George, and he had this huge grin on his face, and he said, how much is it then? And then he told him, he said, and then I told him, and he said, well, what can I do after that? So, and he came the next day and talked to Prabhupada about it. So it's just a little quick, just to show how. Do you have the book? Yeah, if we can just grab. We've got a newer version of it. But I'm going to get you guys to look at some words from George up in your groups and see what you think of this. Yeah? So could you hand these out? Maybe just one between 2? Yeah, to everybody. Thank you so much. So this is a newer printing of it. If anybody wants to have a look at it, I'll leave it here afterwards. It's just one between 2. If you guys can take about 10 minutes to read through this excerpt and let me know any thoughts that come to you. First section up here, and I've got the next section up as well. But anything on this beginning part that stood out to you, or anything that you found interesting? Yes.
Well, I don't know, what kind of stands out to me is that, so he talks about this God consciousness that in theory that we can all achieve, and that you have proof of God through like gaining this consciousness through yoga. But how could we possibly know that that is God's consciousness? I feel God or Krishna is such an abstract thing that would be a being that we could not possibly comprehend. And so I don't know how we could have this kind of blissful conscious experience, free from materialism and everything, and be, this must be, with certainty to say this must be what Krishna's consciousness is?
Beautiful question. Very, very profound. Anybody have any thoughts on that? The question is, how can we really know, if I've got you right, and you can correct me, that the consciousness that we're feeling is actually divinely inspired and not just our minds, or not just something material? And how can we know somebody or something that is antimatter or spiritual here and now when we're very much involved in matter? Have I got that right?
Yeah.
I kind of
Yeah.
semi-phrased it. Anybody?
Mine would be just a reflection on approaching this concept and reflecting back 2 years just over when I first approached it. And
So you're talking from your experience?
yeah,
right
for
now?
me personally, was
Yeah.
the fact it's George Harrison writing this for one.
Yeah.
It's the pinnacle of material success, and
Yeah.
he's saying, well, Jim Carrey came out and said it too. He's another
Yeah.
popular.
Yeah.
He said, I've been extremely rich, or I'm extremely rich, I'm extremely famous, and that's not it.
Yeah.
And he's effectively saying, I mean,
Yeah.
look at who's saying it,
Yeah.
and he's saying, that's not it, it's this.
Yeah.
You know, and that's powerful. And
Yeah.
that causes you to, all right, I'm putting my faith in George's understanding there,
Sure.
but it was enough to stop me to look a bit further into it, and then you start to, you know, it resonates the further in you go, really.
Okay. So Owen's speaking from his experience, and he's saying that he feels very moved by the fact that it's spoken by somebody who apparently seems to have everything materially that we would strive for, and is speaking quite frankly and saying there's an aspect to yourself that you can experience that is very, very deep and spiritual and profound. So it's an anecdotal experience of somebody that you feel you could put faith in to some degree, and can see that it's quite powerful that they're saying this. Okay, so that's one response. Any other responses to how can we know it's something divine and not just something concocted or just material? Another aspect is like material.
I guess you don't really.
You don't.
know.
Yeah.
Part of looking for Krishna is to first accept that Krishna is at the end of the path. You have to choose to go onto the path. So some don't realise that they are, so they don't realise that they don't know. But I guess you don't really know, but you just have to have faith that you are looking for that God consciousness.
Okay, so if I've got you right, you're actually saying we don't know. That's the response, is that we actually don't know.
The first
What
step
it
is like accepting that it exists and trying to look for it.
But you're saying you
Not
could
sure.
have like theoretical knowledge that there could be something there, and then trying it out and seeing if the results that are supposed to come, or one could say that maybe one of the early levels of yoga practice would be freedom from anxiety, or experiencing a level of satisfaction within the heart. There may be so many signs and symptoms or signposts along the way, you could say, from those who have already walked the path, who would say this is what you see at this point, and this, just like when we follow Google Maps, we were getting lost on the way here. With myself and Madhuri, and we're like, oh yeah, okay, I can see this sign, and or sometimes it's a building, you're like, yeah, okay, I'm on the road. So in the same way, on a spiritual journey, there are landmarks and signposts and things that are supposed to start happening to yourself along the way. But I guess you could also say, but how do you know objectively that that is real, or whether it's actually just, again, a subjective thing? Yeah, Sundar?
I was going to kind of add on to your Google Maps thing, because like the reason I believe Google Maps works is because I've done it like so many times.
Sure.
But the first time I did it, if you were to hypothetically go back, I didn't know whether Google Maps worked or didn't.
Yeah.
And so that first time I had a small leap of faith.
Yeah.
And then I tried it out, and I figured out, okay, that 1 minute journey did take me to the right spot.
Sure.
And then maybe I'll do a journey that's a little bit longer now.
Right.
So I think, theoretically, I know there's going to be people that disagree, but I think it doesn't matter whether if it's divinely inspired or not. I think more practical is like the real world effects of it.
Sure.
I know that philosophers won't be happy with that kind of answer, but I think it's like, regardless of what it is, if one sees a transformation in their character and one sees transformation in their life, I think that's more important. And so whether one figures it to be divinely inspired or not, I think the process of spiritual realization is like a science. Like you try it out, you don't really know much. Then by experience, you see different things, you see that you're making progress. And then you think, okay, you know what, there's something there.
Sure. Wonderful.
Just from a philosophical perspective, from epistemology, if we're talking about what we know and what we don't know,
Sure.
how far can you take it then? Because how do we even know we exist, or how do I know the world exists? It could be all a simulation. So like we can take it to the nth degree of objective evidence, right?
Sure.
So there's just so many places that we could go with it. It's just about, like what you're saying, like what is really my experience? Not to say that there isn't an objective truth, but there's
Like okay, let's say something like material, right? Like how do I say, like, how do I know that like my mum loves me? Like how would you actually like characterize that scientifically? I mean, okay, I can measure whatever chemical,
Sure, we looked
right?
at
But
that
like
index.
that's a proxy there.
Yeah.
Is that love, or is that just something being released in the brain? And so if that's true for something material, then I can't diagnose that. Then how am I going to go to something beyond?
Okay, wonderful. So there are a few responses there. If there's any more to that one, we could take one more, but then I think we should have some more of your thoughts, and then we can always come back to it. Don't know if any of that helps, by the way. Some different perspectives. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? I liked the point about utility that Sudha made, I have to be honest. And I think what Madhuri said is also true, that how strongly and how far do we go with whether we know something and the proof for it, especially when it's something that can't be measured by our current machinery or systems of measurement. But if it has use and utility in your life, and you see that the results that you're getting here and now are beneficial or are wanted or helpful, then that could be something to say, well, maybe I'll try the 2-mile route from Google Maps. Now I've tried the 1-mile route, and see if that actually works and gets me where I need to go. So, very practical points. Yeah. Anything else on that? No? Okay, any other points that stand out to you? Let's take 2 more before we go to the next bit. There's a lot in this. I know there's a lot to unpack, but yeah, I mean, it starts off talking about one source with different names, but yeah, anything that else that stood out to you guys? What do you guys think of the drop of water in the ocean analogy? That the self has the same qualities as the supreme person, self, divine. Any thoughts on that one?
I mean, I don't know if it's completely true, like that analogy, because there's only like certain characteristics of an ocean that can't be replicated with a single drop of water. So I think like there's like limitations to that analogy, which I don't think it is in like when it comes to consciousness, like God's consciousness. I don't think there's a limit there.
So basically, you see a limit aspect to the analogy.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, and it's a material analogy.
Yeah.
For something that we're trying to understand that's very difficult to grasp. Yeah. Okay. Anything else that stood out there? Yeah. Right.
Interesting. It says each soul is potentially divine.
Sorry?
The way it says on the last line, each soul is potentially divine.
Each soul is potentially divine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it maybe not divine. Like there's potential for you to work.
There's potential for you to go either way, you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what it sort of implies.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? That we have potential, but it's not that we're necessarily going to fully understand that aspect of ourselves. I mean, I think we have experience of this, right? And I guess that's one of the things this society is here to explore, is that because we identify with matter, because we're living within the realm of matter. With the Vedas explain that we've been conditioned by living in this sphere for timeless time, so many different lifetimes, and so we identify very much with matter. But we all have this spiritual potential, and can be divine. And are you asking a question in that, or do you see that it makes sense? It kind of makes sense. Yeah, I guess the bit that you could ask is, does that mean that we're potentially not divine as well? Yeah, it's a very good point. From everything I've read, the soul in its essence is naturally divine, actually. And my understanding of this is that we can uncover or come to understand or realize our full potential. Not that we're potentially not divine. That's my understanding. Okay, I think this is the second bit. Anything on this? Second half of this? Again, it's talking about this uncovering of the natural qualities of the self in yoga, and the singing or chanting of mantra, which you'll learn more about or know more about, hopefully through the meditation. Anything on that? And we talked about this word yoga and your understanding of God. I think I really like that one point in here is that George is making, is that we each have our own understanding of what is divine, or what is the aspect that's beyond, or the source, or that we're connected to. And I think it's really nice that he says, I also request that you make an appointment to meet your God now. So it's not saying my understanding of, it's your understanding of. And I think that's quite powerful, because we all have a different understanding. And I think within each faith, it's not even about faith traditions, because even within each faith tradition, every individual has their own understanding, their own connection, and their own seeking or searching for that, even if they don't realise they're searching for it. And that's one of the points he's making, is that we're all searching for something to complete us, or something to connect with. Yeah. Any other thoughts on that? Otherwise, we'll go to the next. Okay, so this is the last slide. Actual love is possible. Oh, I don't know if I've mistyped that. With Krishna, yes, I think that's right. That is actual love. Once you love Krishna, it cannot be broken at any time. It cannot be broken in any circumstance. So somehow or other we have to, there's some Sanskrit there, Yenitena Makarina Mana Krishna Niveshayat. Somehow or other you just engage yourself in loving Krishna. That's the success of life. Now here, Srila Prabhupada is using the term Krishna, which is a Sanskrit word which means all attractive, to coin what somebody else might term as divine or supreme or truth or God. But the point he's making here is that this art of loving connection, this art of loving devotion or bhakti, is something that will give you the most amazing success in your life. And that once that connection's established, it's never broken, it's never lost. Even if you let go of it and forget about it, it's still there. And you just carry on where you left off. Like, let's say I get into spirituality and then after a month I'm like, no, it's not for me. And maybe 2 lifetimes later I decide that, actually, I think there's something in it after all, and decide to pick it up again. That account just accrues, it doesn't diminish, it doesn't go anywhere, because it's not material in that aspect. It's not something that can be taken away from you, because it's a connection that's already inherent in us as well. That's the understanding of the Vedas. So, any questions before we go to the meditation? So I'm slightly over time. Okay, no questions. That is wonderful. We will go straight into the meditation, and the food's here, so please don't leave. After the meditation, if anyone has any questions, we can discuss them over food or dinner. Is that okay? I hope everyone's cool with that. I just don't want to keep that, because I think it's probably warm. Don't want to keep it waiting too long. Thank you so much. And now over to Maguri.
Can we have a big round of applause for